Good afternoon. Welcome to the Weston Public Library's Author Talk with Andrew LeCompte. With a master's degree in humanistic psychology, Andrew LeCompte developed a deeper method of interpersonal communication, which involves tapping into each person's emotions and what they are most hoping for. He then taught empathic speaking and listening skills to people across the United States. In the spiritual realm, Andrew began meditating in the 1970s. In the 1990, he began studying the spiritual text, A Course in Miracles. After persuasion efforts from the guru teacher, Andrew left his wife, son, friends, and all his possessions behind and moved 2,000 miles into his ACIM-based community. There he contributed his teaching and counseling skills, plus his book editing and video editing skills. But after 6 grueling years, it proved to be a cult and he escaped. With the help and love of his son and his new wife, Andrew devoted himself to intensive recovery programs. Please welcome Andrew.
Now, a little bit about me. I do remember who I am, but I'm going to use this. The history of how I came to write Finding Miracles, Escape from a Cult. Grew up in an unloving household, was looking for love and community. And I kept looking, and even I got married, but it didn't quite fill the hole. But while I was looking, I wrote that book, Creating Harmonious Relationships. And I wrote it because it was the closest thing to my heart. It's what I really wanted, is to get people to communicate with each other empathically rather than fighting with each other. Something unheard of in my family. We always did the fighting part, doors slamming and all that stuff. It was in 1990 that I started reading A Course in Miracles. And wow, it seemed like the love of God might be what was missing from my life. And this book was so convincing about the love of God is there. You just need to shift your thinking. They call it A Course in Mind Training. And you realize that the metaphysics of the thing is that apparently way back in eternity, the ego mind got an idea. What would it be like to separate from God? And so the ego tried it. And suddenly, boom, he's terrified because he feels separated from God, like God's going to punish him. So what does he do? He makes the world as a place to hide where spirit cannot enter. And here we are. So that's kind of the metaphysics of it. But it goes on like our thinking, the ego mind. It runs its own little show, and it has its own perceptions, and it believes its perceptions are true. And it's all wrong. It's all a distraction. And if we only were to become still and pray, listen for the voice of the Holy Spirit, then we would experience that fullness, that love. We'd connect with people. There would be a transformation. It'd be wonderful. And I wanted that. And then I went to a conference of people from A Course in Miracles, and David Hoffmeister was there, and he spoke, and I thought, okay, you know. But then he walked across the whole auditorium and sat next to me. I thought, whoa, I must be chosen. This is fascinating. So I started looking him up on the internet, and he was a big presence on the internet. And I began following him. and downloading his videos and written stuff, and was really good. I mean, it was the best stuff out there on A Course in Miracles. So I went to several of his retreats, but I went to one in Kentucky where during a break, he came over and sat next to me again. And he said, Andy, I want to write a professional book. It's going to be my first book. I want it to be good. Will you edit it for me? Because he knew I was a writer, editor. And I said, wow, yes, And I did. And it was a good book. It was called Awakening Through A Course in Miracles. And I thought, this is even before I moved there. I was still in New Hampshire. And I thought, wow, I'm chosen. I'm going to be the guy who helps him channel the words of Jesus into language and print books and videos, because he had me do video editing too, and promulgate this message to the world, which is sensational. It's really the best. And I spoke to my wife at the time about this, and she said, well, if you want to do that, you can do it by yourself, because she wasn't interested in spiritual things. And back and forth, a lot of trying and persuading. So David Hoffmeister kept calling me, and one of his messengers kept calling me and saying, really, you need to come out of the world like Jesus and Peter the fisherman. They all left their families. They had to come out of the world in order to teach or promulgate this message in the world. And I want you to come to my community and help teach this, help promulgate it, be a teacher. I already was a teacher. And I thought, wow, I was excited. Finally, in 2011, I decided, okay, I'm coming. First, my wife, in a kind of desperate move, took me to see her psychotherapist. And he said, well, what's the matter? Isn't this person a loving wife? I said, yeah, she is. And is she attractive? Oh, yeah. And is there anything you don't like about her? No, nothing. Then why on earth are you going to leave her? And I said, because I'm called by God. And this was what I really felt and believed. Conversation stopper right there. So I put my stuff in a car, gave her everything that I didn't throw in the dump, because I didn't want egoic things to hold me back. And the Course in Miracles says the past doesn't exist. I mean, it's just all props and stuff to keep you stuck here. So I drove out there, and it was wonderful. The place is like the Holy Land. It's a high desert with dramatic cliffs and some little kind of evergreen trees occasionally dotted around, pinyon pines, something like that. And there was this river flowing through the canyon where the ranch, now monastery, for A Course in Miracles was. And I was in heaven. I mean, I was teaching a group on Zoom and answering counseling calls and going out and leading discussions about A Course in Miracles, and just on a roll. And I was sent to Spain, and there was a community there, and that was great. And then I went to Hawaii, and there was a community there, and I had discussions. People from all over the big island of Hawaii would come for these discussion meetings near Pahoa, where we were. And then they brought me to Mexico. There's Lake Chapala, which is near Guadalajara. It's the biggest lake in Mexico. A beautiful place. I mean, again, talk about paradise. The place has, because of its high altitude, the temperature is like the same all year round, even though it's closer to the equator. And the flowers and the foliage, everything's beautiful. There was this big compound with, all kinds of exotic flowers in it, everything, a swimming pool and a coffee bar. And, I was flying high. I really liked it. But then I went to Canada, and I was going with a colleague, and we went to one of the most sophisticated Course in Miracles groups that we knew of. And I was going to teach them, and my colleague was going to support me. And we got there, and people started talking about interpersonal relationships. And right away, I'm listening and I'm thinking, well, they're not really doing it like A Course in Miracles says, because David said that Jesus had told him that one of the rules for his community was no people-pleasing. And no people-pleasing. Whoa. Anyhow, they're talking, and I'm thinking, well, can I interrupt with this about no people-pleasing? It goes against my very center. Here I taught empathic listening. It's all about people-pleasing. And I did a little talking in the morning. It was a weekend thing. And then I just said to my colleague, you finish it. I can't do it anymore. I can't walk this talk. And I went back to Utah, where that original community is. And I was bummed. I was kind of depressed. And so I thought, well, to cheer me up, I'm going to go back to Mexico, because I had such a great time there. And I got back there, and wherever you go, there you are. And I still had these same doubts, And the disillusionment turned into depression. And I was just dragging myself around. I sort of lost my editing skills and everything. And it was terrible. And I sort of got to be, I think, a drag on the community a little bit. And I got this ultimatum from David. He said, well, they found out that I'd inherited a couple $100,000 from my mother. And it came in an envelope, and they opened it in Utah. I was in Mexico. And David said to me, Andy, you need to give us that money or get out. I went, whoa, he meant it. So I thought, what should I do? Because I'd broken all or burned my bridges, as they say, and it wasn't, there was no place for me to go. But at least where I was, it was a pleasant place to live, and I didn't know the people there. But really, I felt like I didn't have a friend or relative in the world. But I went to Utah to transfer the money, and I thought, before I do that, I'm going to visit the one person I know who I can trust in this whole organization, and that was Mary Chang. And I went to talk to her. And actually, she had invited me into her room. We lay on the bed, which we usually did. We cuddle intimately, but non-sexually. And I said, I just don't know what to do. There's no place to go. He wants all my money. What should I do? And she said, you should give him the money, because it's the one thing that's holding you back from your spiritual fulfillment, from really coming into your own. It's like this big anchor around your neck. And just give it to the ministry, and you'll be okay. You'll see. Okay, so I gave it to the ministry, and nothing changed. And I was still bummed and still knocking around there. And then one magical day, they said, Andy, we're kicking you out. Even though I paid them, everything. But at that time, I went in, I'd happened to look at my computer before I closed it up, And I got this email from my son saying, Dad, I forgive you. I used to be angry with you for years because I thought you left just to abandon me. But now I see, he said, that you were just pursuing your own spiritual goals. And so I support you in that. And I thought, oh, Jesus. And he said, yeah, I hope you find that spiritual awakening you were looking for. Oh, geez. You know, I hadn't been. They say you have to be hearing the voice of the Holy Spirit, and I didn't. They did, I didn't. Or they said they did. But he said, I want you to come home. I want to see you. And bingo. I was packing up my stuff in my room and walk out. I was going to get a, what do you call them, rental car, Uber, to the airport. And I walk out the door and there's Mary Chang. And I'm thinking, oh, whew, like the one person who can trust me, who loves me, really. And she looked at me and she said, Andy, you still owe us some money for the group in Mexico. You had promised to pay their taxi fares from the Guadalajara airport to the Living Miracles Center in Chapala. And I said, whoa. But I happened to have all my pesos, big wad of them, and I gave them to her. And then she didn't smile, she didn't say goodbye, nothing. She just stepped aside for me to walk out. So I walked out. And feeling horribly betrayed by them, but definitely motivated to get home. So I got home to I didn't have a place anymore, or a wife, because I divorced her. And I went home to my sister's house in Lexington, Massachusetts. And I was depressed. And I started going to psychiatrists. And I thought, well, what can I do to build myself up a little bit? And I tried teaching English as a second language. I went into this certification program, and I flubbed it up because I was still a wreck. So I went to the McLean Hospital behavioral health program and started learning about, getting myself back to myself. And I took some medication and had some other procedures. And finally, things began to shift. And the primary reason they began to shift is just 2 weeks after I had arrived in Lexington, I went online to find one of those forbidden things, a special relationship in which people-pleasing was appreciated. And the first person who came out of cyberspace for me was Brenda, who you saw earlier doing the role play. And she's amazing. She said, Andy, I see who you are, when I couldn't. And she said, I love you. Wow. And she did. And it turned out it was the authentic item. It was really love. Oh, man. Just turned my life around. And so it gave me the energy to write the book, to write a letter to David Hoffmeister demanding the return of my money or threatening a suit for psychological damages. He returned the money. And I wrote the book. I was afraid to put it out there because I thought there's maybe 3 million copies of A Course in Miracles sold, and these people love it, and they're going to hate the fact that in my book I say there are things in there that make you cult ready, and you need to approach this book with some attention. And yes, I had a terrible teacher who practiced one thing, but he actually abused a lot of people, took money from people, and wasn't pretty. So I'm afraid to put the book out there, but with Brenda's encouragement and Stephen Hassan, who's a cult expert, told me, yeah, you can name the names and do it. And so did Rick Alan Ross, who's the head of the Cult Education Institute. And they're great. And said, Andy, this is a great book. Go ahead, publish it. And so did Sarah Edmondson, who is the woman who was the whistleblower at Nexium Cult. And they did a series on HBO or Netflix called The Vow. And in that, that's the story of how she brought down this huge cult by going to the New York Times and stuff. So I sent her my book, and she loved it. And I even got to do, she does a podcast called A Little Bit Culty. And she interviewed me for the podcast. And I can give you the link if you write to me or contact me. I happen to be andrewlecompte.com. So you can just go to my website, look me up, send me a message. So I did put the book out there, and I was amazed that nobody was ticked off. I mean, there were a few people from the greater A Course in Miracles world who wrote to me and said, you know, we don't agree with your interpretation. And just a couple, really. And then when they got around to reading the book, nobody got upset. Because I was really honest, didn't make any threats or attacks. So we've used up a little bit of time here with my intro, but I'm very interested if you have questions about anything.
So I haven't finished the book yet. I'm like 3/4 of the way through. And every page I turn, I'm amazed that this is going on for you. I mean, I'm just thinking, I'm a real skeptic. I do come from I had a lot of love in my family, but so maybe that's why I don't get it. Wasn't striving. My upbringing wasn't, I wouldn't say it was fabulous necessarily, but I think there was enough love in my life where I didn't have to be so into looking for it, trying to find it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best protections, and good for you and your loving family, because people have doubts when they start to go into this cultic group, because they're telling you a line, and they have various mind control techniques for sort of putting the blame on you or sidetracking your intelligent questions and coming back with their thing. And if you have a solid grounding that you're an okay person and you trust your own mind and your own thoughts, and A Course in Miracles isn't telling you that those are egoic thoughts and they're valueless, listen to this, then you're solid, you're good. And so that's why I may not be a bestseller. And yet there are a lot of people who can learn from this experience. I mean, at least they can avoid that Living Miracles cult, which is based in Utah and Mexico now. Don't go there to live. That's a bad idea.
Is Living Miracles like a part of, A Course in Miracles is an overriding book?
It's a book.
And concept, but the Living Miracles centers are a section of that.
Yeah. And they really follow David Hoffmeister's teaching. So they do that thing where he says there are no private thoughts, so you got to tell them everything, and no people pleasing, and watch out for special relationships. You can only be in a relationship with the person we tell you can be in a relationship. Oh, you want to be in a relationship with her? Sorry, you can't do it. And if you insist on doing it, you're out.
How old were you when you started? Do you remember?
I was mature. Well, let's see.
60s.
Despite my youthful appearance, I'm 75 years old. So I think I was in my 50s back in 2090 when I started this thing.
You mean
2009? 2009? Yeah, because you talked,
Yeah,
or 2009, because you had talked about 2011 being involved.
that's when I went out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had been before that, yeah. Okay.
So, but when you were in the cult and you were living out there, what did you find were the main reasons why people joined? Was your journey there typical, or was there sort of an array of things that pulled people in?
Well, they would offer programs and courses, and even there was a music festival in the summer at Strawberry River where everybody gets together. They have some good musicians, and it's fun. So there's this really fun exterior. David looks jolly and happy, and he's sort of charismatic in that way that a mystic kind of person can be. So people are drawn to it. It looks like love and happiness. And yeah, it's intellectually kind of challenging because the course is a bear. It's like 1,200 pages of densely written prose and a sort of yet iambic pentameter, which is kind of hypnotizing as you're reading it. So, I mean, it's got a lot of bona fides, sort of like, this message came in the 70s. It was taken down by a clinical psychologist at Columbia University, and it rings true in a lot of ways, and it's coherent, and it goes deep. And so people are impressed, and they say, yeah, this is kind of like the second coming or the new Bible. This is the way to go. It's like New Age spirituality at its best.
What was a typical day like?
A typical day for me started early, get my own breakfast, go into the studio space and start editing videos and do that until lunchtime. And then we'd have a little expression session after lunchtime. Back to the studio, edit, dinner, back to the studio, edit. So everybody's doing at least 12-hour days. And in order, my compensation was kind of interesting. I had to pay $1,000 a month for this honor to be exploited like that. So it was a rip-off, even if they didn't steal my $200,000.
So what was the food like?
Well, we would, because we were a religious organization, we would go to the food banks in Utah and tell them we had 30 people and we were hungry, and what do they have? And they gave us what they had, which was things that were past their expiration date, old stale cakes and stuff. And we ate that. It wasn't good. Yeah.
Did you feel, when reading about other cults like Scientology and things like that, people who say they've left are afraid of looking at them, especially when they come out against it publicly. Did you experience any of that?
No. That was really good. It's there now.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, they hear us talk.
they're after me.
Got track.
You shouldn't have left that on.
Have you ever had contact from them after you left?
Well, ironically, when word came out that I was publishing this book, I got an email from David Hoffmeister saying, Andy, I just want you to know how much we appreciated your contributions. You're editing the book, you're editing the videotapes, you're traveling around. Actually, I went around and filmed them in Europe as he made these different stops. And All your contributions were so grateful. Thank you, love, David.
Oh, my God. Wow.
What do you think? Sincere?
Sounds like he's
From the heart?
preempting
Yeah.
anything that might be coming this way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
kind of transparent, if you ask me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So no threatening letters? Or
No,
threatening-
no, nothing. You see, one of the course tenets is if you defend yourself, you're attacked. I mean, that don't defend yourself. So if David started defending himself with a lawsuit or something, he would be very obviously not following the course.
Hmm.
And how many years were you there?
6 grueling years. Yeah.
And how many were where you really felt discord and dissension? I assume there was a period when it felt good, but.
Yeah,
how
it
long did
felt
that
good
last?
about maybe 3.5 to 4 years. And then it went whew, boom. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can say this or if it's in your book, but did you witness anything that would be totally like unethical or illegal, you know, that would bring them down if something, if there was enough scrutiny on them? You know, obviously, if, I don't want you to incriminate yourself.
Right.
I'm just curious, you know, is that kind of things that you witnessed?
Yeah, well, 2 women, I guess, have contacted me and said they were traumatized and abused by David Hoffmeister. And they didn't go into details, but I should think that if they wanted to bring it public, which most cases people don't, they would have a good case.
Has there ever been a challenge to their like IRS, nonprofit, religious status?
I don't know.
Wondering.
I don't know.
Yeah. Wow. How did they groom people? I mean, how did they,
Oh, they groom people very well.
but how did they identify potential people? Other than offering the Course in Miracles?
Yeah, well, like the first thing that got me was a 6-week retreat on the island of Mallorca off the coast of Spain,
Wow.
where mandarin oranges grew right on the trees. You just pick them and eat them.
Garden of Eden.
Yeah, yeah. And then everything was wonderful there. And David showed a movie every night and talked about it, told us the spiritual interpretation. And then we would have like in the morning or the afternoon, we'd have an angel walk in which we would walk individually blindfolded between 2 lines of people. And as you walked along, they would caress you and whisper, "We love you, welcome, you know, we welcome to heaven," you know, and all these caresses, some of which were very intimate and would not have happened if I hadn't been blindfolded. And I thought, wow. And we kept doing things like that. It's called a love bombing in cult terminology. So I was love bombed. People told me they loved me. This Mary Chang, she was back there back then. She would jump up when I walked in the room and call out, "Andy!" and run and hug me. I mean, wow. You know, I was carried away. And yeah, there was no shortage of young women who, you know, would pair up with David for a while, or with one of the messengers, maybe. But I was interested seriously in the Course. I didn't leave my wife for nothing. I wanted the spiritual truth. I wanted to awaken. And no way it happened. I mean, I had miracles before I went there as a pastoral associate for the Unitarian Universalist Church. I would go into hospitals with people who were dying, and they would have a great peaceful experience. And families of people who were dying say, "Wow, who was that guy?" You know, I came in and I get the family members who were back against the wall in fear when this patient was going through spasms and splattering blood on the inside of his mask. He was dying HIV. And I walked over to him and put my hand on his arm and said, you know, he's all right. He can still hear us, even though he can't see us. And all he wants is to know that we still love him. We love him very much. And that he wants us to know he loves you. And come on closer. And, you know, when you feel comfortable, you know, just put a hand on him. And then we started singing Amazing Grace. And just transformed the atmosphere in the room from fear to love. And I thought, okay, that's it. That's Course in Miracles. Miracle, I want more of this. I went there and never had a miracle like that again until I got home, went online, and Brenda came through cyberspace into my life. And she is the final miracle. If you want to know the punchline of this book, Brenda is the final miracle. The last chapter is all about her.
How much did it cost individuals to go, to, for instance, to Mallorca?
Oh, yeah, a fair amount. I mean, the going rate, I guess.
So the people that would go to this would have the wherewithal to go, so David would have someone who he might be able to pick the pocket of as well.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Lots of people gave up all they had, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they did. I mean, afterwards, like a woman contacted me and said, you know, I gave it all to David Hoffmeister, and I have nothing left. I am sleeping on my sister's couch, and bless her, you know. She,
Meanwhile, David Hoffmeister buys a retreat with the money you've given him.
yeah. Well, right after he got my $200+ Mary Chang told me he purchased a temple in Ahihi, which looked out over the town and the lake. I thought, wasn't that interesting? He had the money to buy a temple. It was my money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did you do when you came back, other than finding Brenda, to decompress and to heal?
Well, the writing really helped. And prior to that, the McLean Mental Hospital really helped. I was actually an inpatient there for a month. And I had good help and support. And some of the grisly details are in the book. But, you know, when I first got the suggestion, Andy, you should go to McLean, they'll help you. I said, no way, because that's where my older brother, who was 6 years older than me, had been incarcerated, I'd say, because they kept him locked up in a room. And he could only talk to me with a guard in the room. So I thought it was a brutal place, but it's changed dramatically since then. So, yeah, mental health professionals are really needed when you get out, because you've been in a cult, they practice this mind control. You have to think the way that they think. And your own thoughts or excuses or questions are just about your own weaknesses that you're here to lose, you know? They put it back on you and say, it's your problem. Get with it. Man.
Hoffmeister must have spoke with such a sense of certainty that everybody went along with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Is the cult still robust, or is it
Yeah.
dying, or
Yeah, it is. I
it's
mean,
not growing?
you know, this hasn't been out too long.
Yeah.
I mean, my hope was sort of bring the whole thing down. But they appear to be thriving, flourishing on. It was mostly an internet ministry. So there were thousands of people around the world who were following him. and they don't know about this book yet. And so they'll be flying in to his different events. But a big word will trickle out. Here I am letting the word out. And I'll continue to do that, but it's not going to be my life work or anything, but I want people to know.
Do you notice, I'm asking this because there's an interfaith organization I found up in Vermont, and I noticed that they're now offering a Course in Miracles.
Hmm.
And I'm just wondering if, it seems like it's a very reputable religious organization. I'm wondering how many of them know sort of what the real nature of this group is.
Yeah, hard to say.
Yeah.
But I did send the book out to the Course in Miracles leaders that I knew of,
Oh, interesting.
except for David.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I'm going to be I was interviewed for a video by Brittany Shawley, who's a course teacher with a lot of followers, and that's going to come out maybe even tomorrow.
Wow.
So the word's getting out.
It's important to note that Course in Miracles is not an organization. It's a
Right.
book.
Right.
And David Hoffmeister's group or whatever, center, has to do with his interpretation
Of the living miracles.
of
Yes.
the Course in Miracles. And his organization is called Living Miracles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not an organization, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
No. The founders of A Course in Miracles have a foundation, and there's a acim.org, which is some of the best teachers they have the course online, and you can ask questions and stuff like that. So there's good stuff going on, but living miracles is a misnomer. They aren't living miracles. They're human like us, and they make mistakes like us, although they pretend they don't. And they're not all happy, even though they pretend they are.
So do they have try to project an image of infallibility?
Yeah. Yeah. David does, yeah. Well, I'll come back with a long discursive, metaphysical rebuttal to something, and then just sort of put it back on you.
But my question when I'm reading this book about this guy, or what he's mentioned, I think, what kind of a mind is like that? And I probably shouldn't, if you follow the news at all right now, I guess, there are people out there that are like that.
Yeah, I mean, there are.
But I don't know, I can't put myself in their position, because I don't think I could be motivated by whatever it is that's motivating them
Right.
to do this thing to be bad to people.
Yeah.
It's a
Well,
narcissism.
some of them are narcissists, to be sure. And on your handout, I define narcissist and sociopath. So a sociopath is one who just doesn't give a hoot about how you feel or about you.
And it's funny how this Living Miracles wants to totally cleanse any good feelings you have about yourself. Whereas they can be narcissistic all they want,
Yeah.
but you can't love yourself.
Right, right. Yeah, there's a definite
There's a disconnect there. What do they
disconnect
call it?
there. Cognitive
Cognitive
dissonance.
dissonance,
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Stephen Hassan, who I mentioned earlier, a cult expert, has written a book called The Cult of Trump, where he brings that analysis to that former president. And it's a very good book. Hasn't sold all that much, but it's good.
How did David find you to edit his book?
Good question. When I was interviewed by the people at A Little Bit Culty, they suggested that he caught wind or knew that I had written this book creating harmonious relationships. And that he thought, ooh, you know, and so he targeted me. The same way he would target people who he knew had a lot of money.
They were grooming you.
Yeah.
And as I recall, because I listened to that interview a little bit, they called you an asset. They identified you as an asset,
Yeah,
and they milked you for what you were worth.
they did. Yeah.
Not a human, you're an asset.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really call me an asset to my face.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But that's what Sarah Edmondson and Nikki, the interviewers,
Yeah,
said to you.
like, yeah. Yeah, she's very insightful. And I recommend her podcast, A Little Bit Culty. It's very good. So. Okay, well, I see we're winding down,
It's terrific.
but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Fascinating.
all of you, even all those of you in the back.
Yes, yes.